I have been an animal lover my whole life. When I was about 10 years old, I announced that I never wanted children, I just wanted animals. And I started actually volunteering when I was in college, working with a spay neuter voucher program. Um, I also became a vegetarian when I was very young. I had rescued some baby birds that had fallen to the ground when boys shot their parents. And I was feeding them, and I was told you had to feed them every 2 hours. So I was getting up in the night to feed these baby birds. And I had just fed them when my mom called me in for dinner. And I went in and I sat down, and there was a chicken wing on my plate. A light bulb went off in my head.
Wow.
And I realized that it was the same sort of animal that I was getting up every 2 hours to feed. And I decided right then and there I wasn't eating any more dead animals. I was actually told by my grandmother that if I didn't eat meat, I wouldn't live to be past the age of 20. Uh, and I said I didn't care. I wasn't going to eat dead animals, but I guess I did because I went to college and decided to take a nutrition class. Now, we're talking back in the very early 70s. And there wasn't a whole lot on vegetarianism at the time, but there were some studies based on Seventh day Adventists. And as I began reading those studies, what I found was not only was I not going to die, that these people had fewer heart attacks, lower rates of diabetes, lower blood pressure, lower rates of obesity, lower rates of breast cancer, everything that we were worrying about as major health concerns were lower in these people who did not eat meat. And so I decided I needed to tell the world about that. I decided to study nutrition, and I found that the best way to teach nutrition was to cook food for people and show people how tasty a plant based diet could be. And that's when I began teaching vegetarian cooking and vegetarian nutrition. And so I had very popular classes teaching nutrition. I did that for 25 years. I actually ended up teaching with a doctor named Dean Ornish. He is a cardiologist who did the very first controlled study showing that a plant based diet can reverse heart disease.
You know, Jennifer, you were so lucky to find the people that you did because I first went vegetarian also in the 70s. And I found Adele Davis who gave terrible, terrible advice, but she was a big guru at the time. And she wanted you to put milk powder and everything because she was so afraid you wouldn't get enough protein. And so I had you were very lucky that you found people who were doing it the right way.
Well, I found Francis Moore Lepage, Diet for a Small Planet.
I did too. Yes, those were my two big books, Adele Davis and Frances Moore Lepage. But Frances Moore Lepage also had things wrong, even though she was coming from a great place.
She made it a lot harder than it needed to be. My husband still jokes when I put a plate down in front of him. He says, "No, do we have the right proportions of grains to
We have the
legumes?"
beans and the rice. And yeah, yes, it was very complicated. It was all very complicated. Who knew it was going to be so easy? That is a fascinating story. I'm so glad that I figured out that you were that same Jennifer Raymond. But I do really want to get up to the present day because we want to talk about what's going on in Humboldt County, and which is fascinating. And you really, like, you've covered the activism front in so many different ways. But I imagine a lot of our listeners may have heard, bits and pieces of this story because it's been on social media and whatever. But I think we need to start at the beginning because Miranda's rescue was a focus for you for a long time, I think. Can you just tell us what they were pretending to be and what was its relationship with animal shelters in California and when you started to find out maybe that wasn't true?
Well, when I moved up here, I recognized a terrible problem, which was that there was no low cost spay and neuter in this county, which is a small rural county, was euthanizing more than 4,000 cats and dogs a year. And so I decided to start a spay and neuter program that got me pretty embedded in the whole rescue community. And one of those was Miranda's Rescue. And he was by far the golden boy. And he actually was called upon by the sheriff's department numerous times when they needed to do large animal rescues. He'd head out with them with his horse trailer and load up the emaciated horses and so forth. And so he was just everybody's golden boy for animals. I was hearing rumors that indicated that that was not a true picture. I heard rumors that he actually, with his brother, would shoot animals and his brother would take them and bury them on his property. I heard that he would take dogs out with hunting parties and they'd hunt the dogs. I heard all sorts of rumors. I tried to figure out what was going on, but I couldn't get any traction. It wasn't until 2006 when another animal rescue person came to me all excited and told me that they were working with Miranda's Rescue and that they were taking cats out to an abandoned cattle ranch that's about 15 miles out of town, up in the mountains in an area we call the Wildcat. And it's called the Wildcat in part because it's full of mountain lions, it's full of coyotes. And they were taking these cats to this ranch where nobody lived. There was an old barn there. They would dump a bag of dry cat food. They'd undo the carriers and the traps, release the cats, and leave. And they wouldn't come back
Wow.
until they had another load of cats. And I was horrified. I said, that is animal abandonment. I actually filed a complaint, a written complaint that I have to this day with the sheriff's department. And I never got a response. Nobody would ever do anything. I also wrote a letter to every single newspaper. Nobody ever followed up. Nobody printed it. Nobody called me for more information. Nothing. Shannon Miranda was the golden boy, and
Wow.
nobody was going to say anything negative about him. It was a very discouraging feeling.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Is it true that you bought the house next door? And did you do
Yes,
that on purpose?
that was quite a bit later. Through the years after that incident, I kept hearing rumors. I started a spay neuter clinic, and we would have dogs in that were a year and a half old and unspayed. And they had gotten them at Miranda's Rescue. And in California, it is illegal for a rescue to adopt out an unspayed or unaltered cat or dog. So again, I filed complaints with animal control, and all they would do is call Shannon and say, Jennifer Raymond is complaining about you again. And he would call me up and cuss me out. I realized I needed to get closer to I needed to see what was going on, because all these stories about dogs being shot, but where were they? I mean, I drove around to every parcel of land owned by his family to see if I could see piles of bones or skeletons or something. But, that was like looking for a needle in a haystack. So when the property next door came up for sale, I bought it. I was
Wow.
the very first one to go look at it. I made a full price offer, and 2 hours later, I was in escrow.
I love
That's
you.
amazing.
Like you are clearly a relentless person, and that's exactly what the animals need.